Welcome back to the Dynamic Life Cycles podcast. We kicked off the year with our first episode featuring Jason the Grizz Haycock, and if you haven't checked it out already, I'd definitely recommend it. But today we have another heavy hitter in the cycling world, someone who's been shaping the industry for decades. Pete Stace-Smith. Pete has been living and breathing bikes since the 70s, where he started in a local shop in 74, became co-owner in 76, and then made the jump to Norco in 79, where he spent over 40 years driving innovation, marketing, and event sport. He played a key role in product development, launching factory teams that helped define modern mountain biking, and was on the front lines of some of the biggest shifts in cycling for BMX, mountain bikes, and freeride. Beyond his industry impact, Peter has been a true adventurer. He's pedaled across Canada, raced marathons and triathlons, tackled Moab more than 50 times, and clocked thousands of miles on his adventure moto. In this episode, we dive into his journey, the evolution of the sport, and the wild stories that come with a lifetime in the industry. If you've enjoyed this episode, please drop a 5-star review. It helps more riders and industry folk find the show. As always, hit me up if you want to chat. Alright, let's get into it. Alright, Pete, how are you?
I'm doing really good, thanks. Yeah. Already been from a ride today, so
really?
The day's only getting better.
Whereabouts did you ride this morning? There's so much snow on the ground.
Yeah, I'm lucky because I'm about a block and a half away from a local park that has about a 5K trail loop, all trails. Okay. So I just block and a half on some sketch sidewalk and then immediately onto the trails and had an awesome ride. It was in the pitch black, so it was a night ride, but I mean, I got lights. So and my dog doesn't care. She's keen to go at any time. Oh yeah,
I bet.
So we got
the snow for sure.
She loves that too. So
and the trails weren't too icy, like packed in? Or?
Not at all. They were like actually super good grip. So, it's probably still to come when it gets a little warmer, where it starts to melt and then freeze. Then it gets sketchy. But right now it's just compact. It's beautiful.
Yeah. So. Yeah. We went snowshoeing just the other day and it was same thing. I can understand what you mean with the fresh snow on the ground and it's like just soft enough.
Just to add a bit of grip.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Where did you snowshoe?
Up on Cypress.
Oh, no way. Right. So, that's pretty.
Yeah.
Did you get a view? Was it night or day?
Up on the night there, and it was
nice.
With the lights and things like that, and Mum and Dad are visiting at the moment, so it was pretty special and magical for them. But,
nice. Could you see Vancouver from up top there?
No. It was actually more of an inversion almost.
Oh.
So it was quite clear sky, but yeah, the clouds were covering the city. So
so you could look up and see the stars.
You could.
So did your mum and dad groove on that?
They did. They loved it.
Nice.
We went and got a hot chocolate from the lodge and things like that. So,
living the Canadian dream.
Yeah, yeah. As Australians that flew over from 40-degree heat. So
beautiful.
It was a bit of a shell shock, I think, for them.
Perfect. Sure. Those are nice changes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I
actually don't know where to start with this because you've done so much and seen so many things in the industry. I think the first thing is I want to ask you about when you got in the industry way back in the 70s, how that looked in everything from the retail space to I guess like you owned a store for a few years there.
Yeah.
What did that look like? Where did that start?
Well, it started, I mean, I was a shop rat, like initially. It started with, I've always loved bikes and I used to ride bikes through the neighborhood and even on the local trails, interestingly enough, way back then, just an old 3-speed that was locked in one gear and drift around the trails. But I started at a local shop, excuse me, started a local shop and started working there and then had an opportunity a couple of years later when one of the partners, it was 2 partners, wanted out.
Okay.
And I was able to, with the help of my folks at that time, buy in and buy half that shop and jump in. And, and then within a year or two, we were still growing. So everything went back into the shop, but I knew that I wasn't going to be partners with my partner forever, but we had in our mind that we were going to start a second store, or at least I had it in my mind that we would start a second store. So I was already looking at locations and this and that. And then an opportunity came, actually a question came to me from our Norco rep saying, hey, if you know anybody interested in a position at headquarters in a buying position, somebody that's good.
Yeah.
I don't want to poach some of your staff because that's always hard when a distributor poaches a retailer. But think about it. And I kind of went, yeah, how about me?
Yeah.
And then like he's like, you know.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But anyways, we put it all together, and honestly, I'd also just been asked by my partner's dad if I ever wanted to get out of the business, that he wanted to buy it in, so it's 100% family.
Yeah.
And I'm like, let's move.
Let's
and
do
it was all done in 2 weeks.
Yeah. Wow.
So it was
just
like
the timing of everything just stacked up.
Totally perfect. And I started at Norco 2 weeks later.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that really answers a lot of questions in the back of my head, because I'm like, not very often do you see somebody that's worked in the store, then bought into the store, sell it so quickly. Because it was only a couple of years, I think. It was, what, 76 to 79?
Yep, it was only a few years.
Yeah.
But, you know, it all lined up. And like I said, I did not have that in my plan, but 2 things got asked within a couple of days, and I went, whoa, this could work. And it was a move that I've never looked back on. And it's been fabulous. And to be honest, I'm just finishing up, or just finished up 40 years, basically 40 years with Norco.
Yeah.
And it's been an amazing career, because it's just been a great company to work for. And I was able to make some internal moves up through the company through the years. And it's just been, it's like a family.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And a good family.
and like I've been here for almost 12 months now. And even I feel that at the level I'm at is, like you see Alan come in, and obviously you worked with his father and things like that, and it's always very much a family friendly environment as much as it is a business.
Yep.
And you have to understand that some days there's hard decisions, and I get that, but they are very friendly in that sense. And it's quite a good business to be part of. And
like no different than here where you are, Jared. I'm sure not every day is like the most perfect day.
No,
like there's shit days at head office too. Yeah. And, you know, like there's industry changes or supplier changes or quality issues or something that just totally wrecks your day and wrecks your month even. But overall, you know, I mean, I was really lucky that 33 of those 40 years I worked for one fellow whose name is Jim Harmon, who was, you know, initially my boss, a VP, and then he went on to be the president. And he was always good. Like he says, yeah, you can bring me the worst problem in the world. Just also maybe come thinking about a couple of suggestions as to how we get out of this.
Yeah.
And then let's talk. And
it's funny you say that, because when I started as an apprentice motorcycle mechanic, the first thing that I was ever told by the owner of the company, and as I say, like the owner of the store, they had 3 of the biggest stores in Sydney. One of the first things that he ever told me is, anytime you have a problem, I don't care if you come to me with it, but come to me with an answer, whether it's right or wrong.
Right.
And then
some idea to discuss.
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect.
And it's like, it's interesting hearing that, because I've never heard anyone else say that. And for you to say that, it's kind of...
It kind of opens the door to, like, you're not trying to shoulder the problem 100% and go, oh no, shit, what the hell am I going to get out of this, right? It's like, okay, well, we could do this or this, but then also in discussion, some other, you know, plan C might come up that's better than both A and B. And away you go. Sure. You know, work your way out of it.
Yeah. So I guess moving into Norco and things like that, you moved into the sales, customer service side. Yeah. And then from there up through marketing and that side of things, or was it more? Yeah,
my initial role there was actually in what's called inside sales, which is like a counter sales, which we don't actually have anymore. But dealers would walk in and go, oh, I got a list of what I need. And you'd like, you know, take the list and make the order and send it out to be picked while you're bullshitting with these guys. And then the order would be picked and they'd take it and off to their shop. Wow. So, you know, almost more like a Lordco kind of thing right now.
Yeah, that's what I'm feeling,
But that sort of ended up where it was quicker to have the orders entered and you know, entered and sent in, and they'd be ready for pickup. Most dealers don't even come into headquarters anymore. Like they just order it. That's right. You know, so... but within that role, I was actually only in that role for about 6 months, and I loved it. I actually knew all the Norco guys before I came, because we'd been a buyer, like a dealer of Norcos for years prior to that. So I kind of knew all the guys anyways.
All the ins and outs.
Yeah, and even the guys that I ended up working with right alongside, I ended up knowing them. But an opportunity came to move up to a buyer position. And initially that was in aftermarket parts. So you think of any part that gets bolted onto a bike, there was an accessory buyer, which is, you know, stuff that you don't necessarily need, like grips or whatever, baskets. But then there's parts for things like chains and derailleurs and cranks and anything that you need to run a bike. And so there was a parts buyer and an accessory buyer, and I moved into a parts buyer position.
Okay.
And then that morphed into also buying parts for all the bikes we built in Canada at that time. And we had a branch called VEET Industries, VEET, which stands for Very Efficient Economical Transportation. Bert started that, Bert Lewis. Wow. And we were building at that time about 20 or 25,000 bikes a year.
Wow.
In Canada. Not actually welding the frames, but bringing everything in.
All the parts in.
Yep, and assembling all the bikes there, including all the wheels and all that. So that morphed into buying product for that, whether it was spokes. There's about 50 or 60 parts on a bill of materials for a bike at that time. Probably now it's about 4 times that.
Yeah.
But so we would buy bikes and have them slot them into an assembly order and when we could do it and what we could build and
I'm just thinking because I've worked with Santa Cruz quite a bit over the past few years, and that's their business model right now is they ship everything individually into the States.
Yep.
They build it up right down to putting the decals on the forks and all sorts of things.
Yeah.
How did you guys go about that in the factory there? Was it within
it was the VEET originally was in our building, but then before I started, it got moved out to, initially down into Port Coquitlam, and then out to, Port Moody initially, but then out to Langley.
Yep.
And the plant was in Langley pretty much the entire time through my whole career until it actually ended up sort of winding down not that long ago.
Yeah.
And we would have the parts shipped in, and, keep in mind that was sometimes from Europe or Asia or USA or Canada, like wherever the source we were coming in from, and bring them in and then slot them into production. And of course there's always something missing, so you're got to put that aside because we can't build it, we're missing the saddles or something. You know what I mean? So
it's crazy. I didn't realize that was something that you guys had done in the past.
That VEET actually over the course of its lifetime within our company built more than 1 million bikes and built more than 2 million aftermarket, not only 2 million wheels for those bikes, but built about another 1 million wheels for aftermarket. So, like right here, when somebody comes in and says, I need a replacement, whatever wheel, we built aftermarket wheels and we built about 1 million of them over that. So we built about 3 million wheels and 1 million bikes over those years.
How many people do you know?
About 30.
About 30 people.
Yeah. And it was actually an interesting story about the staff there because back in, I think the timing was about 84, 85. Mm-hmm. The first Vietnamese boat people came to Canada. It was when people land and they get citizenship and they get supplies. Well, we ended up hiring about a third of that first group. And they're amazing workers. They're amazing people first. They're amazing workers. And whenever we needed somebody else, it's like, my cousin or friend is looking for work, and they'd bring them on. And these guys would outwork us all. And we'd have time and time again, we need a position, we'd hire some, I'm going to say, this may sound racial, whatever, we're going to hire some white dude. And the guy would last 2 days on the line and go, screw this, I'm not putting on cranks for the rest of my life, I'm out of here. And he'd storm out. And the guys would go, I got another cousin that's looking for work, or a friend or whatever. And we had some employees there that had been there, at that time, they'd been there longer than I was there. I mean, and even fast forward another 20 years, we have some employees that retired after doing 30 years or 35 years with the company
on the line,
installing cranks or whatever. You know what I mean? I make it sound simple. And I remember being at a Christmas party once and talking to one of the guys. And again, we knew them well, and they're good guys. And I said, I really totally respect what you do, but I'm not sure I could do that. I'm not sure I could come to work every day and install 300 cranks a day on a bike and watch it go down an assembly line. It was a full assembly line, just like a car assembly line, and do that day after day. And he goes, that's the problem with you white guys. And we had a laugh, of course, because he goes, he says, what's wrong with that work? And he goes, I'm paid well. I have great benefits. It's safe. I can come to work. I can afford an apartment here. My family's here. My kids go to school. And then he stops and he hesitates and he goes, and nobody's shooting at us.
It's
real. And he'd come from a place where all of those were not available and people were shooting at him. And he goes, that's the problem with you guys. You don't even know how good it is here. And I went, so busted. Right?
Yes, that's completely true. We've got Fuka that works down the back here, Brazilian. He was showing us a video the other day of recent footage of people getting shot at in the local town that he grew up in. And it's this is so gnarly.
And you're recent in the big picture, but people that live here they just truly don't appreciate how good Canada is.
Yeah.
And they'll bitch about everything, like whether it's politics or this or that or taxes or whatever. And I just go, but nobody's shooting at us.
No, it's a pretty safe place to live.
And medical and a bunch of other things are pretty good here.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I have similar conversations, not often because I'm not back there very often, but whenever I've gone home, and it's like you see the people that you went to high school with that still live there. They married somebody from high school, and now they've got kids that are now going to the same school that they went to when they were kids, and they just complain about the place they live in. It's like, well, guys, like get out and see the world, or enjoy the place you live in, because it's obviously a great place because you're still here. And it's like this revolving door of just like the same complaint over the same complaint. So I can fully understand what he was talking about when he says that.
Yeah, you bet.
So I guess as you started growing through the buying and then the bike division, bike manager process, what were some of the changes you started to see? Because I feel like in that late 70s, early 80s, there was some massive progress with mountain bikes and things like that. And I feel like everything from like index gears right through to suspension, that was almost, without calling it the heyday of mountain bikes, I guess it was probably one of the funnest periods of mountain bikes because there was so much new invention happening.
Absolutely. It was actually super exciting. And around that time is when I transferred into the role of actual bike division product manager. So at a one time and for about a 15-year period, I was kind of the big guy at Norco, even though I don't ever like to say that, regarding bikes. So every final decision regarding who was the supplier of the frame or complete bike, what the specs was, what the retail price was going to be targeted for the dealer. You have to back that all up to distributor cost and then raw costs and all that. And then say, well, what can we spec to meet that cost? So right down to specifications, like what tire you're choosing and what pedal you're choosing and all that kind of stuff. So there was, and it wasn't solo. So there was people also within the bike division helping that.
There's advising and a lot of, I guess, backwards and forwards chat.
Yeah, but you're right on the technology, and it's amazing because sort of early there, the biggest change was BMX bikes. And it's like, because when I left retail, there was no BMX bikes. Prior to kind of, I'm going to say like 79, 78 prior, there was, 10 speeds, drop bar mostly like originated in France, so a Peugeot or Lejeune or Jetane or whatever. That was the good stuff. And then Crescent and all these other brands, but 10 speeds, drop bar 10 speeds. Then BMX bikes came along and that was like the rage.
Yeah.
And again, it's not just we sold a bunch of BMX bikes. We did sell a bunch of BMX bikes, but we also had the finger on the pulse of what people wanted there. And so there was like inexpensive bikes that any local shop could get way out in the Tules. And, I've heard some of the other podcasts where guys that, have been on these early, like Spitfire bike was their first bike or whatever.
Yeah.
Right up to, at a high level, the ABA and racing. And then we produced like super high-end TIG welded, Tangay tubing, butted like race bikes that were absolutely top drawer, like the best you could get, and in different sizes and different, on our team at the time, which we started a factory team. We had small people and big people. So we did like a mini and a regular and a ZL, which was the ZL stood for Zablotny Long. And that was for Pete, that was custom built for Pete Zablotny and a bunch of other big, tall riders. Guys, and like, it was, again, we were leading edge on those bikes. It was a super fun time.
Yeah. So when you talk about that sort of thing and building into that era, I'm trying to remember. I just watched a really good documentary on like the mountain bike, how it started and things like that, and all down in California there. And I'm completely mental blanking on that.
Yeah, Marin County.
Yeah, exactly. How did that information / sort of technology transfer up into here? Because there's always this kind of, I guess, battle of like, you guys started mountain biking, but we made it better.
Well, you know what? I don't even care about all that because it's just better for everybody.
No, completely.
And I think we were for sure after Marin County and the Breezers, the downhill cruiser, like the old converted hubs 3-speed hubs or band brakes or whatever. We were after that, but we were early here. And, there was we were early on, there was people riding here. And I remember taking what was it, Floval Flyer or Cost Cruiser? It was a USA 24 race bike, 26 race cruiser. Yep. And having the frame pulled out and a dropout hanger welded onto it and putting a derailleur on it. And again, that would have been probably like 82, 83. So it's not like I wasn't already thinking the same thing. And it's not like I'm saying that. But what I'm saying is there was people up here thinking the same thing that didn't know anything about what was going on in Marin County.
Yeah, and that was more the point of the question is it's like, obviously you guys are on the same coastline, but so far apart that you're not always seeing the same information like you do today. Like if somebody in the other side of the world does a triple backflip, I can see it almost immediately.
Yeah, you bet.
Versus back then, it's sort of like whatever you see comes through the newspapers or whatever relevant media, or if there's mail sent or something like that, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, early on it became apparent. I mean, Suntour was the derailleur of choice back then. Suntour and Shimano at a lesser extent, but Suntour pretty quickly got onto like triple cranks with super low gears, long range derailleurs. I mean, I even have a triple pulley derailleur at home, which is trippy because it's really like what the new derailleurs are now with a long cage, so that as it pivoted back, the extra bar with the pulley would take up the slack. Stuff like that. And
that makes sense.
There was all sorts of stuff, but our suppliers out of Japan, at the same time when they're getting demands from California, would get demands from us. And so we all progressed. The whole industry progressed. And it was exciting times because there was, whether it's, double wall rims or, cantilever brakes to like straight, straight brakes, and then on to like you said, the first disc brakes and whatnot. And there was a lot of changes through about a 10-year period. There are a lot.
Did you find, talking about disc brakes, did you find there was a lot of influence coming from the moto side? Or not super?
Not really. Like, it was interesting. I mean, I guess that was all going on, but not really. Like the brake companies that we were like initially dealing with, like, I mean, I have again a prototype still on in my workshop of a die-comp disc brake.
Okay.
And like Hayes was probably one of the original guys that got it right and could make a strong disc brake that was bike specific. But again, Shimano and SRAM and all these guys followed pretty quickly after that. I mean,
and they're not really moto sort of companies. They're bicycle specific as such. So it's always interesting. Like obviously growing up.
Probably the only moto transfer over was we did a bike early on that had Tomaselli levers, and Tomaselli was a moto company, so they're actually like almost the same lever that's used on like a trials bike or a motocross bike that we used on an early mountain bike.
Okay.
A little like a higher end bike, and it was but it became. I mean, there was some people. Obviously, Marzocchi was a motorcycle based company and whatnot, but.
Yeah, I guess the suspension probably had a bit more influence from that world more than like your disc brakes. Obviously, if you want to call it a gearbox, is external versus internal.
Yeah. It was a lot of. I mean, probably not unlike other industries. There was a lot thrown at the wall, and 10% of it stuck. Yeah. There was lots of weird shit that like.
Oh, I bet.
We'd go to Interbike and there'd be 600 or 800 exhibitors, and you just walk by booths and go,
yeah, what do you think?
That guy won't be here next year. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But again, if you poked into every booth and looked, there'd be something pretty cool that you could either adapt or buy or use, or if it was changed, it might work better for our use or whatever. So it was.
So I guess, and I was going to talk about this later on, but it's a really good question while we're talking about it. What did you see really separate the mountain bike to be what it is? So like obviously there was like the derailleurs, the disc brakes, suspension. Fat
tires.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. I mean, mountain bikes did, when you look back even now, like they started out with, let's say, a 2.25 or whatever tire almost immediately. And, I think the access of what you could do, even if it was full rigid on a mountain bike right away versus anything that you've had in the past, like a road bike, was instantaneous. You could instantly look at any fire road or any gravel road. And I mean, we rode like up Mountain Highway and up and up and up to the access and had a beer at the top of the peak back in like probably about 1984, 85. you couldn't do that on a road bike.
No.
Gravel bikes weren't around then.
Back then it would have been a 19 or an 18 mil tire, even narrower maybe.
No. You mean on the road bike? Oh yeah, like 21 was big.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. 700 by 21C. But I mean, even back then it was almost more 27 by 1 1/4 or 1 1/8.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, it would have been full imperial.
Yeah.
Way back then too.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
And serrated steel rims, which don't work good in anything,
No.
especially when they're wet.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So mountain bikes opened up like just huge potential. And like I was really lucky in that I absolutely loved bikes and I absolutely loved mountain biking. And so like I'm like anytime something new, it's like I want to try that tomorrow.
Yeah.
And like I'd be keen on trying it and then passing it on to somebody else to try or whatever else. And
okay.
It's been really fun that way.
What was some of the highlights of the things you've tried? Like,
good question.
Where do we start with that?
Well, you think of mountain biking, like right now, somebody can walk into a store and buy a bike that is just super dialed, even for $500 or $1,000 or $5,000 or whatever, But I mean, initially things like suspension front fork, disc brakes, like we were going through on rim brakes, we would go through a set of pads on a weekend.
Yeah.
Because it's so muddy here. And if you're riding lots, it just mows them down. And like, you lose all your power. You'd throw another set of brake pads in at the end of the weekend. So, whereas, like going to disc brakes and finding out, wow, you could get a season or half a season out of a set of pads. Holy smokes, mind bending, and same with, we'd actually run in the muck so much and ride so much in the winter. We're lucky here versus lots of other parts of Canada that don't really get snow. I mean, we have it now, but we don't really get snow. So we could ride all winter here, but it's going to be muddy, right? As long as you don't mind wet and mud, it's going to be good. Yeah. But the same brake pads, as they're trying to grip the rim, are just mowing the rim down. And we'd actually just carve the rims right out until the rim would fail from the brake track. It would just go right through the brake track until the tire blows the brake track off. Yeah,
and I guess not that I was able to feel the difference, obviously, in the mountain bike world, but especially on the road bikes, when the road bikes went from rim to disc.
Yeah.
Just the quality of the wheel, as an alloy wheel, the quality difference was massive. So I could only imagine the difference on a mountain bike going from a rim brake to a disc brake. Absolutely. Because there's so much more load on those wheels.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, probably 90% of the big stoke on that was just the braking control. Because again, rim brakes, you have no control. You start into some chute and you pull it on, you got nothing for the first 20 seconds. You're like, holy shit.
Yeah.
And then it just goes to full lock or whatever, whereas, I mean, disc brakes are kind of like cars. When was the last time you worried about your car stopping or not stopping?
Yeah, exactly.
So,
yeah, interesting.
So disc brakes were cool. I mean, even telescoping seat posts, because again, there was a time when we added quick release seat posts to everything because you could actually drop your seat to descend.
Yeah.
And then you'd, put it up to go up a section. But, when you get like the trails around here that are up and down, and there's a compromise. So you end up, screw it. You either put it at 3/4 and just ride it, and then it's too high for descending and too low for climbing or whatever. But I remember the first telescoping seat post, and industry friend of mine who was a super weight weenie shows me this, and I'll go, this guy's name's Mark Jordan, showed it to him, but he's like, Pete, I can guarantee you, if you try this, you'll never not want to ride with one again.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's pretty bold words, man. And because especially from a weight weenie, which I'm not, but he was, and it's going to add like whatever, 1.5 pounds to your bike.
Which in some cases is more than 10% of the bike.
Amazing, right? And anyways, it like history, because it was like, oh my God, how could I not ride with this? And you don't, you take it all for granted now, because I probably changed my seat height 50 times on every ride now.
Yeah.
Or 100 times. You know what I mean? You don't even think of it to pop it up even just for 20 meters.
Yeah, exactly.
And then drop it again, So.
And that's like, I think I'm just thinking about that now. It's like, I remember watching, and I don't know if you remember Glenn Jacobs at all, the trail builder.
Yep.
I remember him saying when they were building, I think it was for Cairns maybe, for the world champs there. He's like, I'm going to build a cross-country track that they have to run a telescopic post on.
There you go.
And sure enough, now I don't think there's a cross-country bike that doesn't come out with it. For sure. With a post like that.
Yeah. So things like that, I mean, it's been... Honestly, I just look back and go, wow, the bikes now are so cool. Like, I mean, they're just so good. Just start checking off whether it's index gears. I mean, even the SRAM versus Shimano, now going to even electronic gears, like for crying out loud, but teleposts, disc brakes, dual suspension, front suspension, all that. It's just everything is added to the ride. And, you know, for some people at the high end level, like the World Cup or the race level, or even just even a weekend warrior, it's made them faster. For the average consumer, it's made it safer. Is the bottom line. They're probably riding at the same speed, but they're in about a 20 or 30% better safety zone. Yeah. You know, and not even realizing it that bike is saving their ass.
Yeah,
you know?
For sure.
So
tell me a bit about all the different factory teams, because I'm of two minds with factory teams, and I think if it's done for development, it's an amazing idea. As a marketing thing in today's age, I don't know if it's that economical to have a race team. And obviously Norco have just kicked off their downhill team and things like that, and put a lot of money back into that. So I gotta be careful with what I say here.
No, but we probably have similar thoughts, Garrett.
but you like started a lot of the factory teams through the years that you were at Norco. How did that come about, and what was the reasoning behind that? Was that part of that type of thing?
Yeah, good questions. I mean, the first factory team that we sort of officially started was a BMX team, and that was back in early 80s. Yeah. And again, it was it's let's get some of these riders. We're already at the events supporting the event, so let's take some of these riders and give them a bit more support, especially the good riders, to sort of show our product, show that people can race this product to a high level. And we had like in BMX land, we had a factory team and we had a factory support team. And again, it was just all grassroots, mainly West Coast, because that's where our head office is out here, mainly West Coast. But it was amazing, super good. Got into like the next actual factory team we had was we did have a cross country race team in the early 90s that was, again, sort of, I'm going to say BC Cup, Canada Cup level, like BC Cup mainly. Again, Western Canada focused. Same kind of thing. We're going to a few events. We'll commit to going to half a dozen BC Cups, but we'll be there. We'll support these riders and whatnot. And we would use those riders for sure for input. Like give them some of this product. Give them some tires to try. Okay, we're going to spec our TNT race bike next year. Yeah. Here's 3 sets of different tires. We need to know your feedback on what works well for your terrain or conditions or whatever. Sure. So we would use those guys, and they were great, like super good. Probably still at a level where we're well below a World Cup level. Like these, I mean, they're good riders. They're still way better than any of our staff as far as speed and horsepower and everything else. But, you put them, if you drop them into one of the big USA races or a World Cup, like, top 50 or top 100, sort of, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like they're not going to be placing. But then that sort of changed into the gravity team and gravity / freeride. So our downhill / freeride, those guys really helped us because I'm going to say that's where Norco became for sure an industry leader. And that could just be me talking, but I'm pretty sure if you asked other people, we were an industry leader. Being based near the shore here, we were building bikes that were hanging together on the shore when pretty much all other bikes, keep in mind that they just finished about a 10-year trying to go lighter, 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 and lighter. And then that bike would show up on the shore and blow the head tube off right away. And so our bikes were never light, but they were durable and they were hanging together. And so when Whistler Gravity Park started up and everything else, every time up there, we'd see somebody walking down the slope with a blown off head tube or a broken bike or this and that, whereas our bikes weren't failing. Yeah. And so the free ride team, the gravity team, race team was again BC Cup, local. But then that rolled into the free ride, and the free ride again, there was no real, at that time, Crankworks was not just starting, but you know what I mean? It wasn't really a thing. So it was more just like these guys would go out and shoot with guys like Digger and the North Shore series and these, and then people started seeing these bikes and what people were doing on the shore all over the world going, holy shit. Yeah. This guy's going to ride off this 10-foot drop or a teeter-totter into a drop or, whatever. Yeah. Like you see guys like Leachy and all those guys way back in the day. Yeah. And Wade and all those guys, like there was a whole bunch of like world-class free riders, downhiller / free riders, very talented riders that were based all within about a 20K circle of where we're sitting right now. Yeah. So I guess as a complete sidestep here, moving over here, I grew up racing and in the racing world, not much in the freestyle world or the free ride world, if we want to call it that. Right.
when I look at the dynamics of the North Shore, do you think that had a big play in why there is so many free ride versus races here in the Sea to Sky area? Is that
well, I mean, again, for every, like, if you look at racing is a pretty quick pyramid.
Yeah.
There's the top 10, there's the top 100, top 200, and after that, you're kind of a nobody.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you could be the best in your area. If you want to show up at a World Cup, you won't even qualify.
Yeah.
Right? Even though you will or are the best in your area. Whereas free riding is just buddies riding.
Yeah.
And like, that's the best part. Like, I was never really a racer. So that was just my absolute vibe was, let's just go for a ride. Let's go check out a cool trail. Let's ride a cool trail. Let's get good at that trail. Mm-hmm. And whether it was here or whether it was Squamish or whether it was out the valley, you know, Burke was our local mountain above our building and would give you a good spanking anytime you wanted it. People don't realize Burke is a technical mountain.
There's a lot of technical out there.
Sure. But, you know, but then Whistler Mountain Bike Park, you know, was local to our drive and whatnot. So, you know, we were able to have access to that. And lots of people, sure, there's people that are into racing. And I applaud racers because they're not me.
Yeah.
And no. And I love the passion and I love that they're racing a clock and have at it. In other words, I think it's amazing. And there's some very good racers. And, but, you know, myself and for all my buddies and a bunch of our staff and everything else, the riding was what it was about.
Yeah. And that's, I think what I found when I moved here was the competition vibe was different.
Is that right?
Yeah. It wasn't about racing yourself down the mountain. It was almost, without making this sound like a testosterone fight, but it was almost more of like as you say, you're going for a ride with your mates and you're egging each other on to be better.
Yeah.
And it was quite fun, in the nicest way to say that, without it being a race as a competition as such. And it was, and then when I sort of looked broader out, it was sort of like, until you got over to the east was where you saw a lot more of that sort of racing vibe and things like that. And obviously the landscape plays a lot into that, and the way
I think a Europe influence also, because you know Europe probably wasn't into free ride as much as they were into racing.
Yeah.
And again, you know, props where props are due. There's some extremely fast people coming out of Europe and would be coming into the East Coast, and again, East Coast guys racing in Europe. So, you know, the Eastern guys, they're way more focused on a clock than they are on, hey, let's go ride like, you know, a teeter-totter in Squamish and a skinny line. Yeah. They're not into that at all.
Pretty much as slow as you can ride it.
Correct.
So it's quite funny. There's a story right at the beginning of COVID. Kim Steed, who I'm sure you know quite well, and then we were on what was it? Boundary, I think it was. Anyway, obviously a very technical trail, lots of wood on it, quite steep. Not a very good race trail per se. One morning, he came in to the store and he was telling everyone he just got the KOM on Strava. Without fail, there was myself at quite a high level in Australia. There was an Italian gentleman who was quite high level in Italy, and then 2 or 3 others that same sort of background. Anyway, without fail, the next day, without any of us talking to each other, we all went out there individually and blasted down it.
Trying to beat that time.
Yeah. And it
how'd you do, Jared?
I ended up with the KOM
nice.
that day. But it was quite funny because then the following day, Kim went out, and he's going to laugh at this when he listens to it, but I have a sneaky suspicion he cheated on the course to get it back, because he lost it by about 20 seconds, and then he went back and got another 20 seconds on the...
So he made 40 seconds different from his last time?
Yeah. So
Not Kim, he wouldn't do that.
No, never. But it was quite funny, and thinking about it, we ended up having to have almost like a truce agreement that we wouldn't go back and race it, because it was like a week into when all the restaurants and everything closed down, and no one wanted to go to hospital. So we're like, all right, we need to calm this. And then in a couple of weeks, when this all blows over, we'll go back. And obviously 3 years later, it never blew over. So it was quite fun.
Yeah. Well, that's agreeing. You're a racer.
Yeah.
And like I said, I applaud that, because people that are racers, you're competitive, and it's a good thing. It's, I'm saying that positive.
Yeah,
I mean,
no, I agree.
I've learned some amazing things from racers. I'm just not a racer.
Yeah.
So.
But that's the thing is like, and that's, it was just like an interesting, and obviously you seeing all of this and having the teams and then talking about how the gravity team sort of morphed into that sort of free ride team and how that sort of changed is always interesting because obviously as mountain biking transitioned from XC only into their, whatever you want to call it, that sort of lycra downhill period into maybe the Sean Palmer period with the baggy, how that transition happened and then the timing of the free ride movement happening and obviously there's a lot of external influence on that and how different areas broke down that.
The one mix that was kind of between that bridged that was our trials team. Yeah. And that was an interesting story of even how that happened because we were opening our brand new facility, which is our still current our head office in Port Coquitlam, like our world headquarters for Norco bikes. And it was a brand new building. It was a beautiful building. We're going to have a grand opening. So I said, hey, I'm going to hire, there's a local team here, Team Goat, a trials team to come out and do a display. And we had one of the guys out and he said, what we could really use is like, if you could give us a couple hundred skids, we'll stack them in different styles. We'll do a hop from here to here. I'm like, perfect.
Yeah, that's
easy. So we did all that in the parking lot and the staff were there and whatnot and some guests and whatnot. And it was really rad. It was super cool. These guys did a great job. And we're watching this going, that's super cool. And Jim, that guy I spoke of earlier, goes, we should hire these guys. I'm like, I'm in. Yeah. And anyways, within like 24 hours after that, we had a meeting with them and it's like, hey, we'd like to actually, because they didn't really have any sponsorship. It was just 4 guys that were having fun doing this. Yeah. And we said, hey, we'd like to put together like a factory trials team, like, give you some stuff and no problem. Like, but we really want to ride our bikes. It's like, well, no problem. But what we'll do is we'll give you one of our standard, like I think it was a Nitro at that time, a hardtail race bikes. Yeah. We'll give you one of those in a small size, which is probably pretty close to what you're riding. Try that, and then we'll custom build what you need from there, right? So about 2 weeks after that, the Nitro is actually better than the bike we're presently riding on, which was custom built for them. Yeah. So anyways, we got them onto production frames right away, and that's where and Ryan Leach was signed there, and so. Okay. I mean, again, that's you could make a whole podcast on Ryan Leach and probably should. Yeah. But that's when we signed Ryan and, fast forward, like he was still riding for us 23 years later. Yeah. And here, I'm off shooting again here, but think through all the people, in racing and everything else and name how many people have raced for the same company for more than 20 years. Yeah. When we started this, we came up with about 7 or 8 names, like whether it's not racing or ridden for. Yeah. So whether it's a Hans Ray or whether it's like Wade would fit into that. Yeah. Whether it's Tinker Juarez, whether it's Ned Overend, Ryan Leach, Jay Hoots. And we only came up with, like I said, about 7 or 8 names. And 2 of them were guys that rode for Norco for more than 20 years.
Yeah. And it's funny you say that because I see that not only in the racing side or the athlete side, but in the whole company. Yeah. Like you have Grizz, yourself, like Steve Pukish, you have
amazing tenure.
The amount of people that are 25 plus years in the company. Yes. And then I think that goes back to the Lewis family. Yep. Obviously there was a period where they had sold part of the company out and now Alan rebuying it and things like that. It's quite amazing how that sort of 10 years.
The most fun story about tenure, I know I'm getting off on another tangent here, was, do you know Chris Hennessy, our export sales manager? Okay, Chris was working, we were down at Interbike Trade Show, the biggest trade show in North America at that time. Yeah. And, this would have been probably, I'm going to say maybe, 2010 or something like that. So, people know us, like we have bikes that are hanging together and whatnot. We're showing bikes. And this BFA, which is a big fat American, sorry if I insult anybody here, wanders in and he's all like, Norco, who are you guys? And I'm like, no, we've been around for a while. We've actually already been around for like 40 years or something. Chris is talking to him. So, and the guy goes, nah, never heard of you. Like, so, and then he tries to bust Chris. Like he goes, so did you just start yesterday, like working the trade show? Chris goes, no, I've actually been working for these guys for 17 years. And he looks around and he goes, and I think I'm the youngest tenure or the shortest tenure employee in the booth right now. And the guy's like, oh, and he couldn't win that one either. And he kind of huffs and like storms out, just like, but like at that time he looked around and there was like Chris, or there's like guys like Steve, or, you know, Skip Swain at the time, the sales manager, or, you know, Bert was there, or Jim, the VP or president, what, you know what I mean? Everybody was 17 years or more in the booth.
Yeah.
And this
which
guy,
is impressive.
And this guy was trying to bust his chops. He'd never even heard of us. I'm like, well, you might have just crawled out from underneath a rock, because we have been around.
Yeah, you need to open your eyes a little bit further than in your small town.
Yes.
Yeah, no, that's, as I say, it definitely has that vibe, and it's interesting, everything from athletes right through, that it's kind of like that.
You know, by the way, did you know Chris is moving to your homeland?
He is. Yeah. He is. It's funny, when I first heard about it, I was like, well, if you ever need a job, I can work there.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. But I think he moves over there pretty soon.
Within the next 6 months or so.
Yeah. Tell me a bit about your adventures, because not only have you had an insane life in the bicycle industry, but just scrolling through your Facebook, and not that you have much on Instagram, but from all the stories I've been told, there's Baja trips, there's Tour Divide trips, everything from bicycles to motorcycles to you name it. What?
Yeah. I like to have fun.
Yeah.
Now, it sounds like I've never worked. I do actually still work. My next door neighbor would always look when I'd be loading a bike on a Wednesday, and she goes, yeah, you're going to work, right? hey, this is work, you know, whatever. Anyways, I like to have fun, and I like to have fun on two wheels. So, and I do blend bicycles and moto as well. Haven't always. It was bicycles for sure for the first about 30 or 40 years, whatever. But little known facts, like I pedaled my bike across Canada, right from coast to coast, right from here to Newfoundland.
Yeah.
You know, a year later did a 5,000K tour of the British Isles, and I've pedaled lots. Again, never raced, but pedaled lots. And more, you know, recently sort of moto adventures, as you mentioned there. I got back into motos. I used to moto when I was a young guy. Got back into motos maybe 2010 or something like that, and have been on adventure bikes. Have been down the Baja, 3 big trips down the Baja, like 5,000K off-road trips down the Baja. We rode the entire Continental Divide from like the BC border, 49th parallel, right to the Mexican border.
Yeah, wow.
And that was over 2 trips, because again, we're working.
That was on a motorcycle?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're working. So it was like, okay, well, we have like, 2 weekends in a 10-day or whatever 10-day period. So we're going to ride as far as we can until Saturday noon, and we'll pull the pin and ride home. And then the next year we'll go back and start where we finished off and do that. So,
yeah, wow.
But I still enjoy it. I love riding adventure bikes with all my gear, self-supported. And like last year, I spent a month sleeping my tent off my moto. So not a month trip, but
in total,
a 2-week trip here, and then a 1-week trip, and then a few overnighters here and there.
So did I hear from somebody that you go down to the Baja race as well?
I was really lucky. Yes, is the short answer. I was really lucky. I was talking to our California rep at the time, and just said he's a moto guy. He was like a gasoline head guy. And I said, one thing that I'd love to do someday is get to the Baja 1000, but I don't want to be like sitting on the sidelines watching them come by. I want to be involved somehow involved in a team.
Yeah.
And he like casually goes, I could probably make that happen. And I'm like, don't tease me. And anyways, so we stopped that day, like he was wrapping, and we stopped someplace, and he made a call and this and that. And about an hour later, where he's having lunch, he goes, yeah, you're in for this year. If you want, you need to be in California November 20th for the departure. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me.
Wow.
And what it was one of his customers ran a Baja race team. It was a class 10, like a 10 car, they called it at the time. And you can always use extra crew or a driver. Or like one thing I could bring to the table is I could drive a truck and trailer, and I was comfortable in that position no matter where it was, even down some weird back road or whatever. And so went down and crewed for them, and then actually just was able to go back and crew for them a couple months ago.
Oh, wow.
And they've moved to a trophy truck now, so it's the big game now.
Yeah.
And but amazing, absolutely amazing. And Baja 1000 is mind-boggling, just because it's really just bragging rights. There's no prize money.
No.
But there's $1 million rigs, and there's $1 million race teams, and it's
exactly that. As you say, like at the end of the day, they're just racing through the desert.
Yep.
It's not heavily televised. It's not. No. There's no massive media. There's nothing. No. It's literally an arm flex that they're racing for.
Yeah, and I've mentioned the $1 million trucks, but the other cool thing is, like, in 4-wheel vehicles, there's like, like a Bug, like a stock Volkswagen Bug class, and in like moto, there's full on, the Honda race team, right down to, like I met a guy that was from BC that like 3 or 4 of his buddies, they just got together and drove down and were self-supporting and self-doing it. Like, so you can do it on an absolute budget, or you can do it on $2 million.
Yeah.
So
it's
like there's teams with helicopters and there's teams with like the guy gets off the moto and then gets into the truck to help drive to the next spot.
Fills up his own bike with gas.
Correct. Sends his buddy off and hops into the truck to drive to the next area. So it's pretty cool.
No, it's such an amazing race. And when I heard about that, I was like, I have to ask like what you did and how you got into that, because it's like we've got a race in Australia called the Fink Desert Race, and it's an out and back overnight. Well, I shouldn't say overnight, but it's a 2-day, if you want to call it that. And there's a bunch of people that I know that have raced it and been a part of it. And then obviously coming over here, always growing up in the moto world, seeing the Baja, understanding Baja. And it's just like, it puts hairs on the back of my neck watching
Dust to Glory.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And it's like even the Krusty movies and stuff like that, and all of those type of things. And it's like, these guys are insane. And, and then, not that I really followed a lot of the Tour, the Paris to Dakar.
Or Paris Dakar,
the Dakar and things like that. But then once Toby Price got involved, and then Chucky Sanders and those guys, he just won this year. And it's like seeing these guys in it, it's just like,
gotta watch this. Watch this too.
So it's kind of really cool.
For sure, there's better coverage on the Paris Dakar, or the Dakar race now, because it's all over the world. But then there is the Baja 1000. I mean, there's lots of high video clips and shorties and people that cover it, but there's no coverage like there is of the Dakar.
No.
But it's a cool event. I mean, it's a national holiday down there in Baja, and the locals absolutely love it because it brings a ton of people, it brings a ton of cash, like it brings influx of, to their economy. It's huge.
The top teams are down there for a good couple of months.
Pre-running and everything. Yeah. Like, we were not a top team, but we were down there for probably altogether about 10 days and doing a week of pre-running prior to the event on both sides, not the Sia Cortez side as well as Pacific side. So 2 separate sub teams with their own pre-runners and everything else.
And just learning the course and things like that.
Learning the course first at day, and then if you have a night section, doing the whole thing again at night. So you've pre-driven the entire course even at night and whatnot. So it's amazing. It's super cool. And I'm just a lowly person within the team, but I absolutely love it. And what I lack in knowledge, I gain in enthusiasm, and I'll sign me up to drive a truck anywhere or help with a pit anywhere or do anything. And it's fun because I must have done something right, because he says, you're invited back next year. Anytime you want to come join us, come on down.
Wow. Yeah, as I say, it's such an insane race and things like that.
Yeah, it's super cool.
And then you've also done a bunch of marathons.
Well, I don't actually consider myself a runner, and I'm still not a runner. That's
okay. We can say you're not a runner.
Well, I'm not. I'm not a runner, but I took up running, about, I don't know, maybe 15, 20 years ago, just as a bit more of a winter sport, and something that, it was more, interesting enough, for a holiday, destination holidays. And my wife wanted to go to, say, San Diego or Phoenix or Honolulu, and she was a runner. And so I'd be like, well, I think I better do a bit of training and maybe I'll come along and try to do this and whatnot. But we ended up just making them holidays. In other words, we'd go down a week early, sorry, not a week early, a couple days early. We'd run just to get acclimatized, run the event, and then have a week holiday at the end of it. And it was really more just destinations to go and run someplace warm in our winter up here when it's pouring rain. But fast forward 20 years, apparently I've done a few more things. I've run about 20 or 30 half marathons, and I'm probably, I don't know, a dozen full marathons and even some ultras and whatnot. So, but I'm still not a runner. I'm really not. I'm running this weekend, actually, coming up. There's a half marathon. So I've been training. It's been about a 14. It's actually in Vancouver. It's called the First Half.
Oh, yeah. I have heard about this.
And, a game, but it's like it's going to be snowy and -2 or 3 at the start. And it's not going to be fast. But I don't really care about the time anyways. A bunch of people I know are super bummed because it's not going to be fast and whatever. And I'm like...
like, correct me if I'm wrong, the first half, if we call it that, because that's the actual event name.
That's right.
Not?
Yeah. It's kind of the first half marathon of the year in the Vancouver area is really what it is.
And that one is normally quite a fast course, is it not?
There's people that are super fast because it's quite often cool. Hopefully not raining, but even rain, the fast guys don't really mind if it's a light rain because it just cools them as well.
Yeah, exactly.
The people that are serious love it because it's relatively flat, if not fully flat, and it's fast.
Yeah, because I remember maybe last year or the year before, and I'm the same. I'm not a runner, and I struggle to run now because I've hurt my legs too many times. Let's just say that. And but I was looking at that because it is quite a fast course.
Yeah.
So but yeah,
not for me.
No, not this weekend with the way the snow is.
You can't see it, but you look at this body. Does this look like a running body to you?
Oh, well, you can. There's a camera there.
Oh, shit. Anyways, you know what? It's fun. I have a group of friends that I love running and riding with, and they will change over to riding in the summer. And it's funny because just last weekend we were running, and we had we're tapering now, so we had a 16K run in the snow and it's cold.
Yeah.
And I said, gosh, I'm looking forward to get back on my bike. How soon after this event can we get back on our bikes? Like, because they're all now into gravel. So we'll be gravel riding instead now.
Yeah.
So
do you find you use the cycling to help recover from the running? Or you don't pay that much attention?
You know, it's funny because you'd think that whatever cardio you gained from running would help you riding. But usually I just, because I'm trying to ride still. I'm not trying. I enjoy riding every day.
Yeah.
And so it's just almost like you get on and your legs feel like shit, and then you'll just spin it out. And by the end of the ride, you're like, oh, I feel better now.
Yeah.
But,
yeah, I would say the same. With all the running I've done, I've only ever done one half. And when I was fully focused on doing this half because I had made a bet, so I had to do it.
What was your time, Jared?
It was 1 hour 26.
Holy shit! Okay, so you're a fast dude. No, you are.
Only.
That's a fast halftime.
It is.
It is.
So the bet that was made was the Sydney Half Marathon, which I didn't realize it was hillier than what I thought it was, but still relatively flat. I'd made a bet that running was easy compared to cycling.
How'd that work out?
I did an hour and 26.
Yeah.
I still believe that in a technique setting.
For sure.
And the reason the bet came around was because I was with a bunch of runners at the time, and they were all upset that they didn't run fast enough. And I said, how did you train? And they said, we just ran long distances. Yeah. I was like, well, there's your problem. You need to sprint. Sure. You need to do sprints to run faster.
You need quality. Yeah, for sure.
And they're like, well, if it's that easy, you go and do it.
Yeah, put your motor...
Yeah. So the bet was that the Sydney Half Marathon to finish in the top 100, which was an hour and 20.
Holy.
And
dude,
the first half of the half, or let's just call it a quarter marathon.
Yeah.
I think at the 10K mark, I was, what was it? It was somewhere in like the, I'm completely mental blanking now, because it would be 86 minutes. So I think
would have been like 40 minutes or something.
Yeah,
or 35 minutes.
Yeah, I think it was in the 35 minutes.
Yeah, for sure.
Was where I was at. So I was way ahead of where I was. I think, it was like sub 4 minute kilometers to get to that first bit. And then
crazy.
Obviously you don't have any mechanical advantage running. So that second half, not that I slowed down, I was still on target to go sub 120 with 2Ks to go. And then I just hit a wall and just blew up hard. And ended up like walking across the line with tears in my eyes.
Well, but I'm going to say right now, you are a runner. And I'm not a runner, so because that's your competitive background. Yeah, you're focused and you're driven, and I mean I say that with props. In other words, like good on you. Yeah,
but the original reason for that is, and what I was asking is because if you're doing a lot of running, I always found that exactly as you said, when you get on the bike, you feel absolute trash. Yeah. So in that period of sort of 3 months leading up to that event, I would only ever ride my bike as a training tool to recover versus actually. Right. And it's always, it's interesting to ask cyclists that run. Yep. what their vision or what their view is on that.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I won't even tell you my goal with this weekend then.
Don't worry. There's no way I could do that right now. It would take me 6 months.
And you're also a young guy. So like I didn't even start running until, hold on, what did I say? I don't think I started running until I was almost 50.
Okay.
So, but anyways, I run for fun and I run for like, it's actually easy on equipment in the winter versus riding and trashing gear.
Yeah.
But I don't eliminate riding. I still try to ride.
Okay.
It's just, it's a fun thing to do with like-minded friends. We're really a bunch of drinkers with a running problem is the bottom line.
Yeah. I feel like that's most of the cycling community and running community anyway.
If you're not racing, that's it. Yes, it is.
Yeah. Very much so.
Yes.
Last question before we wrap this up.
Sure.
Where do you see the technology in cycling going? So, as you mentioned before, like you've seen a lot of innovation. You've seen everything right through to the new age with all the electronic shifting.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's now electronic suspension.
Yeah.
What do you see coming?
Well, that's a really good question because if we'd seen all of the stuff we've talked about coming 5 years ahead of when I thought it was coming, there's no way I would have never guessed we'd have teleposts, or I would have never guessed we'd had disc brakes or front suspension or full suspension bikes, even at that time 5 years prior to it. So I probably don't know. I mean, a better person to ask a question like that would be somebody, let's say, in the bike division that's already looking out 3, 4, 5 years. But, I think lighter weight e-bikes are coming. Performance, so you take the same, something like a Sight 29er, which is an amazing mountain bike, and make it e-assist, but not 50 pounds or not 55 pounds or whatever. So I think there's going to be technology in that side of it, but hard to say in actual, mountain biking. I think gravel still can grow just as far as what can happen with that. Like gravel up until just more recently has been full rigid bike still. So you might get a little bit of flex here and there or something. But, if you take a little bit of the technology that we've gained in mountain biking world and apply it to gravel, we might see some pretty cool gravel advances. But gosh, I'm probably going to fail at that answer. It sounds funny because it's not like I'm out of bikes. Like I still love bikes and whatnot and still, like them all, whether it's a mountain bike or a road bike or a gravel bike or whatever. I still love getting on them. I just don't see into the future what big changes are coming. Probably, and when my e-shifter failed this morning on my ride, I go, gosh, I'd still have a shifter if I had a cable right now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it just failed because the battery ran out because I forgot to charge it. So it's my own bad. But, that's where I kind of go, technology.
Yeah. But you could say the same if it snapped, if the cable snapped.
Yeah, but when does that ever happen?
This is true. Not as often as a battery going flat.
No, exactly. But anyways.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. So I don't know. That's good. Yeah. I mean, even things like tubeless tires, who would have thought of that? 10, 15 years ago or whatever.
Yeah, that would make that much of a difference to the ride style.
Totally. And yet they're almost industry standard now. So.
Yeah, it's very rare that we see a bike without it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. That's probably going to fail, like I said.
Well.
Maybe I don't have my finger on the pulse as much as...
Yeah, I think you're onto something with the gravel. My gravel bike is... the 100mm XC hardtail.
Yep. Sure.
With 47C tires on it.
Sure.
And when everyone looks at me and they're like, what are you riding? I'm like, I'm riding the future of gravel.
There you go.
And it's it's funny that you mentioned the mountain bike influence on the gravel world.
For sure. Because really that blend, those have both come together more. Like the highest quality carbon race cross-country bikes and what's going on with the highest level of gravel bikes, those are very close.
Yeah.
Very close, sure. So, yeah. I don't know. Who would have thought about BMX bikes in 1975?
Yeah, as I say.
Or mountain bikes in 1980.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, it's always an interesting question with people with a lot of industry experience and to see what they come up with.
I would love to think that there's going to be way more people commuting, but it's still recreation. The bottom line is here in North America, at least, Europe's different. Asia is different. But North America, cycling is still strictly, really, there's the commuters are going to say, I commute, but it's by and large 99% recreation. And so But I'd love to see with, fortunately with the price of fuel and the price of insurance and like busy roads and traffic and on, like insert 100 reasons why we should.
Yeah.
I'd love to see commuters be more respected, like more, I think if it's the old, if we build them, they'll use them. So I think that's got to come too. I noticed that there was a really big change in USA when nationally, now this might all change now with the new administration, but nationally they put a law that all states had to do 2% of their transportation budget had to be to cycling infrastructure. And that was about 20 years ago or 15 years ago. And that immediately changed. Like, because guys were going to be building some $2 million bridge. It's like, shit, we still got to spend a couple $100,000 on bikes.
Yeah.
But by making it law, it happened. And there's cool bike lanes and cool this and that in a lot of places.
Yeah, I didn't realize that was the case, but that's, I guess, a very easy way to change the perception of what needs to be done.
Right, because up until now, like maybe Vancouver is different, but I don't think so. But up until now, it's like, okay, we got to fix this and this and this. We don't have any money left over for bikes, or we had some, but let's cut it in half because now we got to fix it, whatever. You know what I mean? Whereas if they have to by law, that changes it. They say, we got to spend this. So what needs to be done? And all of a sudden they're looking for projects to do. Yeah. So, but anyways, I'd love to see more commuting,
Yeah. And I think with the technology trickling down from the e-bike world and things like that, I think that would be
for sure. It makes it more accessible to people. Like, my wife's the classic example of that. 2 or 3 years ago, she had a beautiful Subaru out back in the driveway and the insurance came due in August. And she goes, hey, if I can make it through this winter with just my e-bike, we should sell that car in the spring. Yeah. And that was about 4 years ago. Okay. So, and her e-bike is her car. Yeah. And combined, we've updated it a couple of times, but she's probably put 25,000 K on her e-bike in the last 5 years or whatever. It's amazing. And that's her car. So, that definitely helps make it more accessible for people. Yeah. And, even when people go, what, an e-bike is $4,000 or $5,000? It's like, yeah, well, you buy a car, insure it and fuel it and maintain it for a year. That e-bike's paid in the first year, let alone the next 5 years. Yeah. So it's a bad argument to try to lay out, they're expensive because.
There's no, apart from the minor service costs, which you're going to get on a car anyway. Correct. There's no addition. No. There's no licensing. There's as you say, no insurance. There's no, you buy the bike.
Go ride it.
And realistically, if you don't want to service it, the price of the bike is the entry and that's it. There's no.
Yeah. 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 So anyways, I'd love to see that more. Okay.
Yeah. As I say, I think that's a very interesting question to ask some of the advocacies. What's happening there.
Yeah. Yeah. They're always, I don't think there's ever enough money to do whatever, For sure. And also the general public still would rather roll their window down and yell at you to get off the road. So I'm just like, really, dude? Come on. So.
Yeah. Yeah. No, we don't need to go there.
No, I know.
I've had that one many times in Australia.
Yeah. That's why gravel's better.
It is.
Yes.
It is.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for coming in.
For sure.
Spending a bit of time with us and chatting. And
for sure.
Going from there.
I have one summary. Can I put one summary at the end?
Go for it.
I've been very, very lucky to work in an industry that I absolutely love. I probably am one of a very small percentage of people that has been able to work at something they love their entire career. And so I've been lucky enough to work with bicycles, and I was lucky enough to have a long career with Norco bikes. But, I can't, if you look back on that, I can't imagine working in a different industry. Like when I'm talking to somebody somewhere and they're like, oh, what'd you do? Bicycles. They're like, bicycles. And I said, I can't imagine working in a different industry. And if I was in this industry, which I have been, I can't imagine working or living in someplace other than British Columbia or even here. And even if you zero it right down to here, it's like, look at the 3 or 4 other good bike companies that have been here. I can't imagine working for another company either. So it's been an amazing career, and I'm here, I'm still wearing the shirt today, and you know what I mean? It's just, I'll represent this brand forever because it's just been near and dear to my heart. And it's been
a massive chapter of your life.
It has been. It's been a great ride.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
awesome. Well, good. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Jared. It's been a pleasure.
No problems.
Cheers.